Now, moving forward, we are going to be discussing in depth about sensory integration therapy or approach, as I said. And then, when you talk in terms of sensory integration approach, as an approach, the brain is involved. That is the knowledge says that the brain is involved in processing of all sensory input. So which means that there's no any sensation that comes into our body without brain processing. Brain have to process it, organize it before we can make an effective or productive interpretation. And by definition, we are made to understand that sensory integration is a process of organizing sensory input so that the body can make use of it in a productive way, as well as giving a very good body response, perceptions, and emotional and thought response. So this tells us that when sensory integration is being enhanced, you expect the body to respond in a very productive way. Not beyond that, we expect the thought process of the patient to be worked on. We expect the perception of that patient to be enhanced, and then we expect the body to use that sensation or sensory incoming sensory in a more productive, adaptive, and acceptable way with its own self drive. So which means that the process have to follow certain sequence, and the patient should able to utilize it or benefit from it in all sphere, in terms of perception, in terms of the way they think, in that of the way they react, in terms of emotions. So all this need to be worked on by the word sensory integration. So if sensory integration does not meet this demand, then it is not a well proper sensory integration. If sensory integration is the goal, it's practiced along the concept of the gold standard sensory integration. All these are going to be achieved. Following away from that, sensory integration therapy also says that emphasize that when the brain are whole and balanced, which means that when the brain is worked on as a whole and it is well balanced, that the balance we are talking about here is the internal senses as well as the environmental senses. When there is a proper organization from the brain as a whole and it is balanced, body movement are highly adaptive. That means the patient will achieve more in terms of sensory processing, and as well learning is easier and good behavior will be a natural outcome. So it means that this move from the concept of the main definition of sensory integration to sensory therapy, which says that when we practice SI in a normal continuum, the standard way, the brains become balanced. And when there is a balance between the brain and the body senses, you expect learning to be easy, you expect body movement to be adaptive. That means the patient should achieve it in a way that suit their need, and also the outcome will be nothing but a well adaptive acceptable behavior from the patient. Now that is general concept about the definition according to Jean Harris postulation. Now moving forward, sensory integrative therapy can be classified under two major categories. I want you to take note of this. So two major categories of classification. One is the gold standard sensory integrative practice as postulated by Jean Harris, and this is otherwise known as sensory integrating approach. The second one under that classification is what is known as sensory integrating others. So if I say sensory integrating, so sensory integrating process, but it is other because it's not part of the gold standard practice. So under the others, we have two sub classification. One is sensory stimulation techniques, and the second one is sensory stimulation protocol. So I want you to be we're still going to talk about it in depth. So first and foremost, I will talk about sensory integrative approach as the gold standard. as postulated by Jean Harris. Then after that, I will talk more about the sensory integrative in terms of Jean SI practice. Says that the neurological problems in a child with a sensory integrative disorder will prevent him from processing his own sensation, his own body sensation of play. So so with this, the child cannot develop the adaptive response. The therapist must able to cajole, encourage, entails and motivate the child into choosing the activity that will help his brain to develop. So which means that our role there, we have to encourage the child through play therapy to get into any activities that you know that will benefit his need. We are not leading the session, the child is in the room, the child know what he wants, but we don't allow them to explore the materials in an unwanted, non-productive manner. So we have to guide their practice. So if I want a child, for instance, to go on a platform and I want him to make some proprioceptive move, I can actually get the child on platform by play. When he's there, I promote the swinging because I know the direction of the swing that benefited the child, meaning that a child needs a angular movement. I don't allow him to go for rotatory movement. Rotatory movement for him will be fascinating, to be stimulating, but I don't want him to get highly stimulated if the child is sensory seeking, for instance. So I don't get it because I know that he will enjoy more of that and that will get him to more being stimulated, which will make him not to achieve anything. So I need a movement that can slow him down, get him more settled. So I will control the platform movement. So it's going forward. So my training will be that the platform should go front and back. And that's what I emphasize to the child, front and back. This is what you need, but it has to go front and back. And on that, I can give a bean bag with a target box. Okay, can you just make a throw in form of a play? Get it? In form of a play. So I'm placing the object, I'm guiding him towards the right use of the object, but I allow him to show his interest area. And with that, I have to modify it in a very productive manner. So from that, when there is one point that I want you to take note also, when as an occupational therapist, when you are doing your work in a more productive and effective way, it looks more like you're playing, but that play should help the child to organize his nervous system, to integrate his what inner senses, external senses, and balance it with the brain processing. And it look more as if we are playing, but the play should be encouraging, benefiting to the child, and to guide him towards the right path. So on other note, the drive to participate in that particular activity should come within from the child, not the therapist imposing a certain task on the child. As I have explained, a child need a vestibular input, and I want to use a platform swing. I know that rotatory movement might fascinate the child. I don't see any need where a rotating angle should be in the room because I know the child will want it. That will get him more high. So rather I will provide an angular swing inside the room, so he has no option than that. Then the child must show me an interest that is ready to climb on that and glide on it. So when you see them with that anticipatory movement from the child, you encourage it, you cajole the child onto it, and you get them into a productive way of using that particular swing. So it means that the inner drive should come from the child, and you should use it in a more successful way. So that means you have to guide it so that the child can achieve a functional outcome. And therapy using a sensory integration approach should be holistic, which means that it has to guide all, or it has to explore all the senses that I've mentioned in second pass. It has to work on everything. So as I said, for instance, a child is on the swing that is addressing the vestibular, and I said I can make a proprioceptive input of targeting. Visual perception is working with target. The touch or the texture of holding that bean bag that I've used as an example, it's working around the tactile. So other senses will also be enhanced, because sometimes we can have a sound around it that when you skills it you get a sound, and when you throw it's going to hit at the target, and there should be a feedback sound. So should whatever activity you are practicing with along SI Gold Standard has to go along with a holistic view of all the senses. And with that, the brain, it's involved, with the holistic, the whole body should be enhanced, the body as a whole should be worked on, all the senses and the entire brain. And with this, we should have a functional and effective outcome. Before I paused on our sensory integration gold standard approach, that's the Gene High gold standard, that ideally supposed to be practiced in order to achieve adaptive response and in self drive of a child in practice on achieving functional outcome. This exercise, or the SI gold standard, is very rigid. It required a specialized training before it can be practiced effectively. I'm saying this from experience. I'm a licensed practice SI practitioner. I say it, but it requires very good special training and a well clinical hands-on before it can be done rightly. So it requires a lot of training, it requires a lot of hands-on, it requires a lot of exposure. And if an institution, it's money based, if I say money based, if it is not functionally based, like working for a child, most of the time the SI unit is always being rigid. And once you have a rigid structure, it tells you that the child cannot achieve the concept of SI practice. That is number one. But if it is flexible, that you can dismantle the materials, you can remove the overwhelming items in the house, you can structure it at any form or the other to the need of a certain child. When it's working along the continuum of SI, you can still manage that situation. But don't make SI being very rigid as it is rigid already. By having a very rigid SI section, it has to be flexible enough to work based on an individuality and individualization of practice. That's one thing. It's very rigid in terms of that, and it's quite a lot of training, it's prior practice, and also being child directed, make it time consuming, because the child will take time to understudy the environment, to get into the session without you prompting them so much to get into it. The inner drive has to come from within. It's not by force you have to do. So if the child gets into it and they want to be excused or run off out of it, it's allowed. But you need to cajole them and find them to get it more right and get into the session. Again, being child directed make it more rigid, and most of the therapists, because of the fact that we don't understand the concept of the practice, so we do more of other form of SI in the name of sensory integration gold standard practice, and we expect a same outcome. No, we cannot expect same outcome, because what we practice is actually two different things. So the other aspect has their own functional way, it has a way of tracking their function, but gold standard has its own 5 steps of how you can track. And if you are not achieving adaptive response, it's nothing, because it's not a problem, but just know that maybe the SI you are practicing is not the gold standard. So as I said, being child directed make it more rigid, it takes more time to practice, and most of us practice sensory stimulation techniques all in the name of sensory integration gold standard. So I want you to take note of that. So the next slide, the next presentation or the next point, will be talking more about sensory integration, sensory stimulation orders. So which are to do with sensory integration orders. So under that, as I said, we have two ends. We have sensory stimulation techniques and sensory stimulation protocol. I didn't say sensory integration now. So it's under sensory integration, known as other practice. The first concept is sensory stimulation techniques, and the second concept is sensory stimulation protocol, which means that it has its own guideline, it has its own way of practice. So sit back and enjoy why I said that in a minute.